Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of No More Excuses podcast. I am your host, Sandi Ballard, the Badass Business Coach. Thanks for being here, for listening, and for investing in you. Well, if you aren't a current listener, or I guess you're a new listener, each podcast I discuss a topic or theme, I should say, that can help you grow personally and professionally. So it's not always about business, but it is always about getting rid of the excuses so you can move forward and grow, like I said, personally and professionally. I want to give a shout out to a couple listeners, Mickey from Zambia. Hopefully I said that correctly, and his business partner, Anthony in Wales. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. I appreciate you reaching out to share how the previous podcast has helped you guys. So thank you again. And see, I love it. I love to hear where people are listening from. So if you haven't reached out before, please do. And Zambia, that's new to me. So thank you very much. The last few episodes, I've discussed mastering workflow management topics with topics as finding and implementing a good CRM system, workflow management, identifying key processes, and learning how to map out your flow, which is pretty much what Mickey and Anthony did once they listened to my podcasts. So, there's going to be days when it feels like it all needs to get done now, but you're only one person and there are only so many hours in the day. Yes, I love coaching people that say, I need more hours in the day. I need to multiply myself, right? It's a crazy alignment between personal, professional life, working in your business, on your business, working too much and not giving yourself that mental break. I've talked about self-care a lot over the years. So thinking about that, it's like, but with workflow, what's one way to prioritize? Really, I love prioritization because that really helps you get things done and stay focused. But using the Eisenhower Matrix to prioritize tasks based on urgency and importance. And I'll be honest, I've been using this without knowing what the system was called to prioritize my tasks. I guess I had forgotten the official name of Eisenhower Matrix. And so I love the concept. Been doing it for years. So, here's what it is. Quadrant 1, urgent and important, you got to do it. Quadrant 2, important and less urgent, schedule it. Quadrant 3, urgent and less important, delegate. Quadrant 4, less urgent, less important, eliminate. Or you might be able to delegate it to. Focus on the tasks in the first two categories. I have a running list of tasks and goals, and every day I rewrite it on a Post-it note. Wish I had my Post-it note in front of me right now. I'd show you. Well, for those who are watching the video, for those who are driving or listening while you're walking or just listening, you can't really see what I'm doing, but that's okay. But on a little Post-it note, I always talk about these giant Post-it notes, right? I have hanging on my wall. But on the little Post-it notes, I put the top 3 things that I need to get done that are number 1, quadrant, important. These have to get done or else kind of things. And yes, I may add to that Post-it note throughout the day, but those top 3 things are what I do first, 1, 2, and 3. And when you find yourself, and I've talked about this too, but even I've done this, find yourself kind of going off scale. Maybe I usually then will draw a line and put other things down there. If I drop below the line, or maybe I get caught up doing number 3 instead of 1, I ask myself, why? What am I avoiding? Or, is there an actual legitimate reason, like my client isn't open yet and I need to contact them. But I try to make sure I understand that and know that and put that maybe as number 2, right? So 1, 2, and 3, even if it's something simple like do a daily social media post, it has to get done. For me, it's part of consistency. And I realized the other day, I didn't put my posts down. You'd think it's a habit, but it's like going to the grocery store for me. If it's not on the list, I'm not getting it. So I realized it'd been a couple of days since I posted. I was like, oh shit, need to post. So it helps me stay focused and sometimes a little uber focused, but that's what, I do. And that's quadrant 1, urgent and important, right? So my social media posts need to be on there unless I've scheduled them out for the week which is one thing I really love to do, and on Fridays, I record this podcast. So that way I can have it done and ready for you on Monday. And I'm not trying to scramble to get it done because it is called Monday Motivation, right? It helps me have more time to check in on clients and be more intentional and focused for them when I'm on a coaching session with them live. If things are falling into quadrants 3 and 4, that's when you should ask yourself if these tasks are a good use of your time. You've probably heard me say, do it or pay for it, right? And then honestly, it depends on how financially stable you are. And if it's not a good use of your time, you may just need to learn a bit more on how to do it. Or if you do it, is it going to take you 2 to 3 times the amount of time, like 2 to 3 times longer, I should say, to execute it than somebody who's more proficient in that? I had a friend of mine years ago who learned this lesson very hard, but he learned it and now he's a rocket star. He realized what he was doing, the tasks he was doing were an admin person's or a lower rate person's could do it and do it faster because he wasn't doing a good job. It was taking him so long, so much of his hours in his day, and he figured he could pay someone an hourly rate and get it done and get done right and get done fast. Yeah. And, I have another current client who's trying to get his social media going. I love you for trying it. I do it myself and sometimes I suck at it, but he's tried having friends help him. They can be hit and miss, all in, all out. He's paid for a system, but that system, actually, they were teaching him how to do it, and that's not what he wants to do. He realized it was in quadrant 3. It's urgent, but it's not a good use of his time, right? He doesn't want to sit there and do it. So we talked through some things. I ended up connecting him with a couple different social media companies, people who do it. And now he's talking with them and he's figuring out which one to use, because then all he has to do is connect with them to discuss any important topics he wants to discuss, and then just review it and make sure it's on point, right? Do it or pay for it. And that's not always easy, is it? Sometimes we have to learn the hard way that it's time to delegate something, and also that it might be easy for you or something you love to do, but it's not necessarily a good use of your time. It's hard to let go, especially if you're good at something or you love it, but it will be important for the success of your company and your sanity to delegate it or just let it go. And, this wasn't supposed to all be about delegating, but delegating is trusting someone to do it right, AKA how you would do it, right? Or perhaps on time or on budget, if there's money attached to whatever it is you're needing to let go of. The thing is, the financial aspect may be indirect with like a sales exchange of money, so it's harder to track. It may be something that comes back to you in months down the road, or it may be you're doing your social media or your marketing and the sales cycle is so long. With the man Kennedy being an architect, his sales cycle is long. He might not get see money from the client for months, right? It's hard. So looking at how to do that, but making sure it's done right, but done your way, and trust. I've helped a lot of my clients learn how to delegate, especially if they can't eliminate it, right? And I've heard so many times from my clients, it's easier for me to do it. Yes, but again, is it the best use of your time? Or if you want it done right, I need to do it myself. Well, again, is it that hard to train someone? The best way to let things go and delegate is train, retain, and check in. Decide what's important, how it's done, or that it's done. My mentor told me once, Sandi, well, besides her saying you can't help everyone, if you want it done, if you want the towels folded right, you got to show people how to fold them right, meaning my way. Some people triple fold their towels. Some people fold them in half and put them a certain way. Yes, literally and figuratively. If you want something done right, your way, you've got to train the person how to do it. So if it's important how your process looks, or how maybe you have a retail center and how your products are displayed, or things are put together, train, because yeah, it might be easier for you to do it, but it is the best use of your time. And time is money, people. And then retrain. Like I said, if something, you got to check in and do that kind of thing. If something's not being done how it needs to be, or you want it to be, or things seem to be a little off track, or the process or task needs to be updated or modified a little bit, it's time to retrain. And that's okay. I have a client who has one department. It's getting a little lazy or slacking on some of the tasks they're doing, and it's causing friction with other staff members. So we talked about that, and she took the time to check in with everyone and see what was going on and explain the why behind what they needed to do that they weren't doing. Sometimes people, if you're high C or S on the DISC profile, DISC, they need to understand the why, especially if something's changed, right? And sometimes we all get it. It's habits. We fall out of habit. It's like, oh, well, I just haven't been doing that. So, you got to retrain, right? And that's okay. That's why people who have CEs, continuing educations, or think they have to go to take courses or go to classes to keep their certifications or licenses. That's like retraining. I love going to conferences because you always learn something more, or listening to a webinar. That's like being retrained, and it's okay. So don't think if you've been retrained lately that it's a bad thing, unless you're just completely fucking up, right? And then check in on the people that you've delegated to. Yes, there's a fine line between checking in and micromanaging. It's trust. Again, you have to micromanaging. I had a client that was a huge micromanager. And like I said, it stems from lack of trust, big trust issues there. We worked really hard on this, and she had that right balance as she pulled back too far and shit went a little sideways because she didn't have her finger on the pulse of the business, but she does now, right? And she learned where that spot is, where that fine line is, because other bodies and people were wondering why she was walking behind them and looking. And that's the thing. Micromanaging is so different from industry to industry, and even what you're doing. You're delegating your stuff that's a little task or a big task, right? And once you've trained and maybe retrained and doing the check-ins periodically, like I said, you have to find out what that looks like for you. And obviously, need help, let me help you, right? And make it more of a casual, like, how's it going? Is this process still working? Are you finding any challenges, or having any challenges with the process? Because maybe the person wasn't doing it the way you wanted to, but is explaining how there's a new way or a more efficient way to do something. And that might be okay for you, right? So when you're doing those check-ins, you could find these things out versus being the micromanager and, standing over their shoulder, sneaking around to hear what's going on or see what's going on, right? And we all know when the cat's away, the mice will play. And also, when the boss walks in the room, you check yourself and behave, right? It's kind of like when my dad would walk in the room when I was little. I would sit up straight and I would be quiet or talk quieter if I was talking. It's like, you learn to check yourself. And it's, and also, if you're that owner or manager that walks in the room and you notice that behavior, yeah, it's a good time to check in and see what's going on and how maybe you've been micromanaging a little bit, or maybe they're slacking. So I'd love to hear from you. How do you manage your workflow with this quadrant idea, or how do you manage it? Do you have another system? How has it helped you? So again, quadrant one, urgent and important. It's probably something you need to do unless you're realizing it's not a good use of your time, then you got to delegate it. But quadrant one, urgent, important, do it. Quadrant two, urgent, less important, schedule it. And that's why I schedule, not that my certain social media posts aren't important, but they're important. And I also put on my schedule times to check in with clients, right? It's important, but I don't need to do it right now. And then quadrant three, urgent, but less important, delegate it so it gets done. It's less important to you and your time schedule and what's good use of your time. I know there's a lot behind all of this stuff and a lot to unpack. And quadrant four, less urgent, less important. Eliminate it if you can. And if you can't, go back up and delegate it, right? Learning how to delegate is important. So I guess the bottom line, all this is prioritize and delegate, right? Delegate what you can't do or don't need to do. But again, I'd love to hear how you manage your tasks. If you use that system, the matrix, the Eisenhower Matrix, almost lost it again. And what do you do to keep yourself on task, and how do you decide what's not a good use of your time, what's not as important to do it right now? Again, it honestly just probably depends on the industry, right? If you're retail and someone walks in the door, whoever's in front of you is more important than whatever is on your desk, or maybe you're doing an email, right? But making sure that you get back to what you were doing. But whoever is important in front of you is the most important, right? Right. What have you learned to delegate, eliminate? Comment here, email me, Sandi with an I, Sandi@sandiballard.com. And let me know. Like I said, I would love to hear from you about this. I'd love to hear from where you're listening from, and any other things you'd like to hear about or learn about. All right. Have a great day. And until next time, stay badass. Cheers.